Hey everyone, welcome to MP541, Trauma and Crisis Intervention. I'm Selena Jenkins, and sitting across this digital studio for me is Jay Hudson. Jay, how's your morning going?
Hey Selena, doing all right. Coffee's doing its job, so can't complain. Hi folks, thanks for tuning in with us. I've been looking forward to this episode. Where do you want to start today, Selena?
Let's just dive right in. What exactly are we talking about when we say trauma and crisis in psychology? I mean, it's not always just, catastrophic events. The textbook by Caviola and Colford, super practical by the way, defines crisis as this sudden event where someone's usual coping skills aren't enough. Trauma, that's a broader thing, right? Can be one huge thing or lots of little things building up over time.
Yeah, and especially with kids and teens, trauma shows up in all kinds of ways. It's not always obvious, like we think of disasters or violence, but sometimes it's neglect or even just instability at home. The American Psychological Association actually highlights both natural and human-made disasters as common causes. But in my classroom, I see crisis on a smaller, everyday scale, especially with community violence. There was this one student, let's call him A. He wouldn't sit near the windows for months after a shooting near his apartment. He didn't talk about what happened, just totally shut down whenever sirens went by.
That's so real. And I feel like people underestimate the ripple effect. A crisis for one kid can sort of bleed into the classroom, their family, even the wider community. Trauma can be caused by abuse, disaster, sudden loss, maybe a big move. That's mentioned in the Caviola and Colford book, too. And I always forget the list. Was it 5 or 6 main types? Emotional, physical, sexual, neglect, and... did I miss one?
I think you're good. Sometimes people split them differently, but the main thing is trauma's not just physical injuries or war. It affects how kids act, how they learn, how they relate to others. Sometimes it's obvious, like rage or panic, but sometimes it's just a kid zoning out or getting in trouble for stuff nobody else notices. And then responses to crisis can vary. Some bounce back, some don't. That's where resilience comes in, but maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves.
No, I think it's all connected. The bottom line is, trauma and crisis aren't always these giant, newsworthy things. Most of the time, they're everyday issues that pile up until coping doesn't work anymore. So what we see in research, or what's in those APA guidelines, is really showing us how it can be any child, any family, any community.
Yeah, for sure, and I'm glad you brought up resilience. Feels like the perfect bridge to what we do about trauma, and that means psychological first aid.
Absolutely. So psychological first aid, or PFA, gets mentioned a lot in our training. It's not therapy, more like a set of immediate actions to stabilize people after a crisis. The National Child Traumatic Stress Network has that whole online course. And honestly, even after working the crisis hotline, I learned a ton. You focus on helping people feel safe, calm, give them accurate info, and link them up with practical resources. Pretty basic, but powerful.
Right, it's kind of like emotional first aid, seeing what someone needs right now before diving into big solutions or labels. It's especially helpful with kids and teens, because the last thing they want is a stranger coming in and diagnosing them 2 minutes after a crisis. Instead, PFA is about listening, normalizing reactions, and connecting them with support. When I did the training with our school counselors, the number one takeaway was, just be present. And, don't promise anything you can't deliver.
And the other piece that doesn't get talked about enough is us, the helpers. There's research from the National Library of Medicine, plus all these trauma-informed case studies, showing that burnout and secondary trauma are real risks. Like, you can't pour from an empty cup. If we leave folks with anything today, it's that understanding trauma means looking at both the science and the people. Helping isn't about fixing, it's about being present, connecting, and taking care of ourselves so we can actually be there for others. All right, Jay, any last thoughts before we wrap?
Just that it's an ongoing process, right? Every crisis is different, every kid is different, and we keep learning. Thanks for sharing your hotline experience, Selena, and I'm looking forward to digging deeper in this course.